I was born and lived for a long time in one of the closed secret cities of the Soviet Union. In which one, it does not matter. I will only say that the surroundings were appropriate. The city stands completely in the middle of the forest, forming a kind of edge. You can leave. Soldiers of internal troops and Soviet are always scurrying around the city. A completely different city is written on your birth certificate, and, damn it, it's always just terribly cloudy here. It's as if you're walking around wearing sunglasses. Now, I can say, this was all compensated by the fact, in particular, the material supply was always plentiful, and you would never ever go hungry. There was always a boiled sausage and toilet paper on the shelves. At the age of 13, my friend Colvin and I embarked on a mushroom hunting expedition, armed with matches, a hatchet, and baskets. As evening approached, we found ourselves in a peculiar spot within the forest. A flat, treeless area resembling a clearing. Rumor had it that it used to be a shooting range. Beyond it lay another section of the forest where we knew there were some abandoned structures where soldiers were once stationed. Venturing out there seemed pointless, so we decided to head back home. By then, our baskets were straining under the weight of our harvest. The fire we had started was emitting faint wisps of smoke. And then, damn it, that same dreadful darkness descended upon us. So sudden and so menacing that even within the city limits, it seemed to draw closer with sinister intent. You know those moments when you're strolling home from school, the sky is its usual overcast self, and then suddenly, it darkens incomparably. The wind picks up, sand stings your face, heavy clouds loom overhead, and the faces of passers-by take on a grim, foreboding expression. Well, that kind of madness engulfed us in the forest. But being in the forest was one thing. The desolation of the training ground made the situation even more eerie. I glanced to my right, seeking solace in the familiar path through the trees. In that very instant, Colvin fiercely struck my shoulder, shouting something unintelligible. I spun around. Damn, all I could think was, there is no earthly reason for that. There stood figures, or whatever they were, utterly blackened, unnervingly blackened. I just said out loud, what the hell is happening with the weather today? I just tried to rationalize them. I didn't want to believe they were actually there and real. Suddenly, Colvin grabbed me by the hair and forced my gaze upward to the sky, then back down to our feet. What I saw and the connection I made me jump a meter high, I swear. There were balls up there, with white and black stripes like zebras. The way those patterns formed grotesque faces, like the delusions of a drunken Satanist, hit me in a split second, making me feel like crapping myself. But the worst part, I realized the black shapes were distinctly moving, creeping toward the tips of my sneakers. Piecing together the facts, I either bellowed or screamed in unison with Colvin in that moment. I don't remember what. My memory of the events gets really hazy, and we bolted. From the sounds behind me, Colvin probably crashed right into the fire, but I was too focused on running parallel to him to notice. I don't remember how much time passed, or how I came to my senses, standing near a lonely concrete block in the middle of the forest. What I saw made me convinced that what I saw was not the result of overwork. A motorized rifle traveling column at high speed stretched the road. A military traffic inspector with a huge red star on a white helmet, walking immediately in front of the commander's armored personal carrier, waved flags from the window of the UAZ. And at the tail of the column were such outlandish cars that I had never seen. I silently wondered after seeing this. The next thing I remember is standing near the city committee building and observing a picture of terrible commotion. First, the building and some surrounding area were surrounded by Marines in black pea coats, facing inward in a circle. The entrance to the building itself was blocked by 2 black Volgas and people standing nearby in civilian clothes and with Kalashnikovs. Right next to me, a general in a uniform with blue hole buttons was yelling into a receiver, sticking straight out of the trunk of a dirty car. This is what he said. I don't care. Not one, but 2 squadrons will take off. I repeat, they will take off. I was about to move on, but then some house manager from the adjacent street approached me. I don't remember his name. He led me out of the ring, and we walked through the streets of the frightened city. Suddenly the howl of a siren was heard in the air. I've heard it in films before, but never here, in real life. Soon, hearing the clank of a rotating bolt, I found myself among the same incomprehensible residents in a bomb shelter. I don't know how much time passed, but I could not close my eyes. Maybe several hours have passed. 3 or 2 days maybe. But soon the house manager said that the radio station said that it was safe to leave. Having unlocked the heavy bolt, we are to be started. The next day was just a normal morning, normal dawn. Traffic cops with machine guns were walking around the square, and I walked, afraid to raise my head up and see the zebroid face, like a brutal grin on someone's head. I reached the house and opened the door. My parents' hugs awaited me. I said that I would tell them everything later, when they returned from work and I from school. I told my mom about everything, and then suddenly, as if realizing that I had forgotten something, I said, "Where is Colvin?" Mom said that Aunt Zena, my mother and Colvin were friends, would go to the police station tomorrow. So, the week passed quietly. Everyone cheered up, and a cheerful and a militant communist mood appeared throughout the city. But not me, because exactly a week later, my mother, taking a day off, took me to the hospital to see Colvin. He lay covered in bloody bandages. I, looking into his black, expressionless eyes, with lips stretched into a smile, said, "He just turned on his other side." Aunt Zena said hoarsely, "He doesn't talk anymore. Not only with you, but they don't want to tell anything. They say that he was stuck with some kind of pieces of iron within him." So, constant fear and depression settled into my life. My classmates did not understand that I was so gloomy and didn't go to play football. Then after 2 months, I was starting to feel normal. But I had new news. Colvin, who had just been discharged from the hospital, walked out at home and did not return. I sit at night and read, and suddenly, I see Colvin going to the restroom. He looked at me and shook his head, and he was going to walk through the door. He's been gone for half an hour. An hour. I opened the door, and there was no one there. That's all they said. After school, instead of going home, I went to the training ground. When I was there was no fear. But something has changed here. The yellow color was more yellow. Maybe there are more mosquitoes. Accidentally looking down, I saw the coals of that same fire. In that moment, a wave of melancholy and disgust for life washed over me so intensely that I felt like hurling my backpack aside and walking away. It didn't matter where. I just wanted to escape. But I took a deep breath, turned around, and started the journey back home, because deep down, I knew that we were the people of the future. I had a job, a family, damn it, even a car, a DACA, and a dog waiting for me. Yes, these were things worth living for, without a doubt. Born and raised in God's country, Lafayette, LA. But Dad's side of the family is all Appalachian mountain folk. 100% American-bred country bumpkins. The kind you can barely understand when they talk to you. Good people though, and great storytellers. I grew up listening wide-eyed to their crazy tales of witches and magic. For example, when I was really young, Dad used to cut our hair. He'd scoop it up, and then go out into the woods. I never questioned this until one day, my youngest brother got his first haircut. As usual, Dad did it. When he was done, he scooped up the hair like he always did. Grandpa was there at the time and he said, "Make sure to bury it," and Dad nodded and went out into the woods. I was about 10 by this point, and I had never been told that Dad was burying our hair. So I asked about it, and Grandpa said that witches use your hair to cast spells on you. He says you've got to go out there where no one can see you and dig a hole and bury it. Otherwise, witches will use it to curse you. Grandpa is shocked that I've never heard that before. He asks, "Didn't your dad ever explain how to tell if a witch made a curse out of your hair?" I tell him no sir, and he explains that witches can put spells on bits of human hair to make a person sick or make them do things. Occasionally, this will result in a hairball. I'm thinking he means like the kind of hairball that a cat hawks up, but he describes it as a big tangled up wad of hair. It just appears, like, out of thin air, wherever you are. Sounds stupid, but he calls my older cousin over. He was staying with us at the time. Telling on about the time he found a hairball. My cousin's eyes go wide. He says that one morning, he was at the breakfast table, talking to his brother. They were sitting across from each other, when a big wad of hair materialized out of thin air. They watched it appear right in front of their eyes. Then it floated over like a tumbleweed towards my cousin. He jumped out of his chair. Those witch balls can burn your skin, he told me. So he grabbed a pair of tongs and plucked it out of the air, careful not to touch it. Then he tossed it in a fire. I asked him if anything ever happened after that. He said no. I asked if he'd ever been burned by one of those hairballs, and he said no, but his friend had. Apparently, his friend was out on his farm one day when he heard a cow in the woods. Thinking one of his cows escaped, he went over. He followed the mooing until he came to a small clearing, but there was no cow there. Then a bunch of witch balls appeared out of thin air and encircled him. He knew what they were immediately and took off running, but he ran into a field on his way out. And the next day, his face and arms and neck were covered in these big burns. Looked kind of like road rash. Grandpa told me to be careful about my hair. From then onward, I always made sure Dad buried my hair if he cut it. I know it's bullshit now, but I still do it myself, cack. Another one from Grandpa. There is something that happens before some people die. They just called it the knocking. Before someone died, they'd hear a tapping at the front door. The tapping always stopped as soon as someone went to check on it. The next day, someone in that house would be dead. Sometimes, only the person who was about to die would hear it, but usually, multiple people would hear it. Apparently, it happened to someone in my family, one of my dad's cousins. He was outside with a bunch of friends and family when they all heard someone pounding on the front door of the house. They looked over, and nobody was there. They figured maybe one of the kids had gone inside and was playing around, so they got back to talking. Then the pounding started again, and my dad's cousin went over to tell the kids to stop messing around, but nobody was there. He closed the door and began walking towards everybody in the yard when the knocking came again, this time quieter. My dad's cousin looked back. Nobody was there. Grandpa said everyone got spooked because they all knew this meant a death in the family. The next day, Dad's cousin was found in his bed, dead of no apparent causes. One last one before I go. I doubt I'll be able to come back, so that will be all from me. I've got a lot of work to do today. When Dad was growing up, there was some woman named Miss Adeline or something like that, who everybody knew was a good witch. If people were sick or needed help removing a curse, they'd go to Miss Adeline. One time, Grandpa sent Dad over to Miss Adeline's house to help her chop wood. He worked up a sweat, and Miss Adeline asked Dad if he'd like some milk, lol. He said sure, and followed her inside. Miss Adeline checked the fridge, but there was nothing inside of it. I must have run out. She asked Dad to help her with something really quick, and she will get him some milk. Miss Adeline grabs a little towel, and Dad follows her outside. She has this big bundle of sticks tied up next to the house. She grabs the bundle and lays it on a stump, then covers the bundle with a towel. "Can you chop these sticks for me?" Dad obliges. Only when he brings the axe down, the sticks do not break. Miss Adeline removes the towel, and lo and behold, the bundle of sticks is fine. No damage whatsoever. Then Miss Adeline grabs a big pail and sets it at her feet. She takes the towel that she used to cover the bundle and squeezes. As she wrings it, a huge chortle of milk comes pouring out. She fills up the entire bucket, then she pours out 2 glasses of fresh milk. Dad takes a sip, nervously. Then he chugs the entire thing. Dad would tell this part by exaggerating, licking his chops and rubbing his belly. Sweetest glass of milk I ever drank. Have the subway near my home. Hang around it when I was about 13 with some friends. Has a really weird layout because the pedestrian walkway leading to the entrance is right by a road that would lead to a vehicle entrance, but when you reach the pedestrian entrance, the road entrance is just a brick wall. When you come out at the other side, there is a sharp 90-degree turn for pedestrians to go back up to ground level, but nowhere a vehicle could possibly go, even if the entrance was not bricked up. It's just a meadow that's level with the road. Anyway, like I say, I'd hang around this place with 3 friends on the meadow side. Friend goes for a piss one day, shouts that he has found something. Some of the earth has come away from the side of the subway where the vehicle pod is, and there's like a big railway sleeper running along it, partly exposed by the dirt, and the rest of it still covered. It's all rotted, and when he accidentally stood on it, he broke a chunk off. Try to look inside. It's a big open space behind the bricked up wall that runs the length of the subway. Can't really see what's inside because it is too dark. Curiosity gets the better of us. Pool our resources together. Have like £5 between us. Go into town that's only a few minutes away. Buy a crappy torch for £3 and a pack of batteries. Get back to opening. Shine torch inside. It's too crap to really illuminate much. Convince friend he should go inside. It's a tight as hell squeeze, even for a 13-year-old, but he gets inside. Says there's lots of junk piled up against the opening. Gives a running commentary on what he can see. Then goes quiet. Comes running back, desperately trying to get out the opening. Pull him through. Says there is someone in there. Tell him he's lying. He just got spooked. Arm comes out of the opening, flailing around. Crap our pants and run away. No idea how they got inside, because one part was bricked up. The other side, we'd only just uncovered half an hour before. Somehow, a man seemed to be living inside the whole time. Forgot to mention that the subway is not there now, nor is the vehicle part. They filled all of it in to make a car park and a road crossing. Street view doesn't go far back enough to take a pic. It was the weirdest thing though. I still have no idea how he could have possibly gotten inside. Even if he'd slipped in through the opening when we were in town, it was far too tight for a fully grown man to get through. My mate was still a child, and not a big lad, and even he struggled. One side of it was the subway wall for pedestrians, and the other was a wall too. The only way in or out was through that opening. I still think about it when I pass by, and wonder how the hell he got in there, along with all of that junk. First time Greentexting, so please don't hate me. Be 9-year-old war trekker in South Africa. Dad is an old Angola vet, often tells me stories of the Bush War. Dad clearly has PTSD. Something about his tank buddies dying. As a result, he drinks a lot. Once asked him about it around a campfire, but he just looked into the fire and ignored me while sipping his brandy. Getting off topic. Grandpa had a farm in the Waterberg mountain range. Would often hunt there, and at my age, the biggest predator I've ever seen there was a leopard and the occasional lion in the parks. That was, of course, before the one hunting trip. Dad and I were camping about 5 kilometers from the main farm out in the fields. We hadn't seen much in the way of impala or kudu, so we just sort of camped and had a chat about school. I remember packing away the 303 in the tent before coming outside again to join my dad for some sausages. Then the smell hits us, in before blood and copper. It smelled musky, kinda like a really big wet badger, mixed with the smell of a civet cat. If you've been to Africa and smelled a civet cat, you'd know what I mean. Since they eat chickens and stuff, my dad handed me his revolver and grabbed his torch. My dad was always eager to let me shoot. We could not see anything in the fields, but since civet cats are small, we did not expect anything out of the ordinary, or were spooked in any way. After about 20 minutes of searching, we gave up and sat back down. My dad looked uneasy, slightly more than usual now that I think of it. I can't remember much from after that, but what happened later that night messed me up. I remember waking up in the tent. The smell was now really potent, like the civet cat was sleeping in the tent with us. There was the sniffling and shuffle outside. I turned to my dad, and he's already in the prone position with the free. I can hear something outside licking the grease from the sausages off my dad's pan. My dad slowly slides the bolt of the free shut, and instantly it stops. The hair on my neck starts standing up because I knew it discovered us. I at first thought it was a leopard, but the way my dad just froze in place made me realize that he did not know what it was. Then I heard the grass move slightly, as if whatever is outside is coming to investigate. I can faintly make out 4 feet from the walk pattern. The way it crunches the grass told me that this thing is heavy. My dad and I slowly got to our feet from the sleeping bags, and I took a peek through the gauze of the tent. In the moonlight, I see it not 4 meters away from the tent. It looked like a hyena, but around double the size, matted fur and longer legs. As it got closer, I saw patches of skin torn to hell, like a reanimated, dead lion hyena cross. The fear gripped me like right there. I wanted to run and cry and crap my springbok underpants. I bent down to hide, but I think it confirmed the thing's suspicion because this damn thing starts making a low moan. Think of that low gargled, blood and throat moans that someone makes after being beheaded. It lifted its head between the tent flaps to meet my dad's free. I remember my ears ringing from the shot inside the tent. Don't remember much from after that, but my dad and I made it back to the farmhouse. I wasn't feeling well after that, so my dad decided to cut the trip short so I can get a therapist or something. Guess he didn't want me to become an emotional fuck-up like him. On our way back to Pretoria, there was this hitchhiker, a white Afrikaans guy with a leather bag. This being the early 2000s, my dad offered him a lift. He gets in, and I scoot over the gearbox. The guy says he's on his way to Bloemfontein. His dad died last night, and he basically came to say goodbye. He picked up something to remind him of his dad while he's here, Bloemfontein being all the way in the Free State and all. As he talks, I get a whiff of this guy's breath. Imagine what a journalist would smell like after a day in the African sun and they peel off the fake skin from their reptile faces. This guy asked me if I want to see what he got from his dad. Yeah, sure. He zips open the leather bag between his legs and almost immediately smell that same damn smell that came from last night. This guy pulls out an animal ear from between his clothes. It had this dark brown color to it and pitch black spots. This thing is the size of my damn thigh. My dad hits the brakes and tells him to get out. The guy looks right in my dad's eyes and gets out slowly, not breaking eye contact. We drove off, and I looked back through the window. My dad told me not to look, but in that brief moment, I saw him still looking at my dad. I am now 28, and I eventually had a chat up moment and asked my dad about that encounter, but he sometimes pretends not to hear me, or that he has no idea what I'm talking about. A few years ago, I was talking to my black housekeeper about the takalosh, and she was always smiling when we talked about it, so I thought I'd mention this encounter, and her face looked like dread itself. In Afrikaans, which I've never heard her speak before, she basically said, "They are called Boltongen. Don't talk about them. They know when you do." Used to work at a quaint little coffee shop. Very small place, nestled between the suburbs and the country. Quiet place with no crime. Coffee shop used to open at 5:30 a.m. until the owner realized nobody ever stopped in at that hour. Place would be totally dead until about 8 o'clock most days. Gave me lots of time to read, which I loved. One day, I set everything up for the morning shift. Grab a chair, pull out my book. Then I hear the front doorbell. In walks this tall man in a suit, wearing a heavy long coat. Looks like he stepped out of a 40s movie. He sees me. His eyes dart around the room like he's making sure we're alone. I notice he's wearing gloves. He asks for a hot coffee, no cream, and a Danish. I remember this because the cops asked me later about his order. It's so early, I haven't even got the coffee going yet. Tell him it will be a few minutes while I brew a fresh batch. He looks annoyed. Asks if I have anything I can make fast. He has an unusual accent, I can't place it all. I tell him I can make an Americano. He tells me to make one and to hurry. He goes over to the window and looks around outside while I make it. This guy's energy is really freaking me out, so I just focus on making his drink. Hand it to him. He pays with a $5 bill. I notice there are flecks on his gloves that look like dried blood. I can tell he's noticed me noticing. Handing him back his change. He grabs my hand, money and all, and forces it back down onto the counter. Looks into my eyes. I'll be back for my change later. He looks at me for a long moment. Then he hurries out the door. Panicked, I immediately call 911. I decide I need to get a look at the guy's plates too. I'm scared, but I know I'll kick myself if I don't do this. Step outside cautiously as I try to tell the 911 operator what happened and where I am. See a large truck in the back of the coffee shop pulling out. Looks a bit like a U-Haul. As it pulls out, it turns right, heading back towards the front where I'm standing. I see the tall man in the passenger seat. Someone else is driving, but I can't see them at all. The tall man is watching me watch the truck. He's got his gun resting on the window glass as they pass, flashing it at me. I rush back inside. A little while later, the cops show up. I go over everything that happened and give them a description of the tall man. They seem most interested in whoever was driving the truck. I tell them more than once that I never got a good look at the driver. Eventually they leave. Tell me they'll keep a car nearby at all times, watching the place, in case the guys come back. I never see the tall man again. Have you ever met the machine elves? Who do you suppose they are? What did they tell you? My first breakthrough DMT experience, I was thrust into a room that resembled an operating theater, except from the fifth dimension or whatever. I was laying on a chair or table with many screens pointed at me, flashing all sorts of patterns and information. There were 6 or 7 machine elves, and they were frantically trying to impart wisdom to me. They knew they did not have much time. I tried to go back a few months later, and they straight up booted me out with the clear message that I had come back too soon, and it was not the right time for me to be there yet. They were either blue or green, but like crazy TV static, and they had auras around them. I have encountered a lot of different entities while using DMT. I don't like the term machine elf because it was coined by one boomer hippie and latched onto by everyone else, and I don't feel it accurately describes most of the things I've encountered. I am not sure whether they are creatures, entities created by God, or whether they are refracted emanations of God's own essence. They definitely come in all shapes and sizes though, and varying levels of spiritual power and responsibility. The most powerful one I ever met was a spider the size of the universe, made out of stars, who I am confident was responsible for the maintenance and maybe the creation of our current material reality and the architect of its arbitrary physical laws. He saw me as I wandered into his workshop, noticed something about me was bent, and picked me up and did some sort of soul surgery to make me unbent. Back here on Earth, my emotional response was extreme, and it has caused massive long-term changes in my perspective and internal self. It feels like being born again, like having that central, spiritual core of me being made new and whole when it previously was not. The one I felt the most love from was an entity I understood to be my mother. My biological mom is still alive, so I wasn't her ghost or anything. It felt like she was the mother of everything alive on Earth, and she was obnoxiously and embarrassingly proud of me when she realized I found my way to her. She showed me off to other entities, like a young mom whose first child just scored 100% of a grade school spelling test. A tiny, minor accomplishment, but her pride in it made me feel more loved than I ever have in my life. Back in the 90s, make new friend at college when I was about 17. Invites me over to his place, still lives with his parents. Go over there unannounced one day. Knock on door. It's already ajar. Say hello. No response. Peek inside. Place looks upside down, like it's been ransacked. Crap, he could be in danger. Sneak inside. Pick up golf club from the ground for protection. Can't hear anything. I'm going to stumble onto this kid's entire family murdered any second now. Go to a little washroom they have at the back of the house. Has a bolt on the door. Undo it. See his parents gagged and tied up inside. Dad has a cut on his head. Muffling it may to help them. Reassure them that it's fine. Big, strong Anon is here now, and whoever was responsible have vacated. Free them. His dad stands up, punches me square in the face, and knocks me straight out. Next thing I remember is coming around with cops there. My new friend from college, and two boomers I've never seen before, giving me a stern look. Turned out, the tied-up couple were not his parents. They were a husband and wife duo that would trick their way into people's houses to rob it. They didn't know his dad was home, and he'd managed to surprise the guy with a golf club over the head, and then overpowered the woman. He'd tied them up in the washroom because it had no windows and just one door that he'd locked from the outside with a bolt. Then he'd taken his family to the safety of the house next door to call the police because the intruders had pulled out the phone line. They were all waiting for the police to turn up while I got there in the meantime and undone all of his hard work. Not sure if they ever did catch the couple or not. Not spooky, but it's a warning for you bros. Don't be a hero.